Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today is the week we have been looking forward to a lot. It's the week before the World Championships in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We are going to make a big preview episode for our podcast ahead of these World Championships. And as per usual, I am joined by Twan and Issam.
Hello.
Hey everybody.
Tom will also do a contribution on the first two categories.
Thanks Noah, thanks for having me, and looking forward to a great weekend of racing coming up.
But that's not everything. You will also be hearing from a number of riders in this episode. Specifically for this episode we spoke with Madigan Munro, Ava Holmgren, Scott Funston, Ian Akert and Caleb Swartz. You will hear fragments from what they had to say in this episode, and their full stories will be released tomorrow. In addition to that, riders who we spoke with earlier this season, such as David Haverdings, Katie Klaus, Clara Huntsinger, also fragments of their interviews will be put in this episode. If you are interested in listening to the full episodes with those riders, as said, tomorrow of the specific 5 riders will be uploaded, but the other riders you can already listen to their interviews as a podcast elsewhere. Let's get into it then. The World Championships this year will, as said, be held in Fayetteville, Arkansas. The second time the World Championships are held in the United States after Louisville in 2013. There was only one race on this specific course earlier, that was the World Cup at the beginning of this season. The course has undergone a couple of changes, and we'll hear from Madigan Munro what she has to tell about the course itself. Maddie, you raced on the course earlier this year during the World Cup. Could you tell us a bit about your experiences that you had with the course there? What was it like?
Yeah, so it was a bit crazy for the World Cup actually, because the day of the race we had a ton of rain. So all week when we were practicing the course, it was very dry and very fast, almost like a road race, with one really short punchy climb. So that was kind of the all-out effort of the lap. And then the day of the race with all the rain, it changed so much and it became a very heavy mud race. And really the mud just played a huge factor in the race. It was much slower and more of a bog and a lot more technical.
The current weather forecast show us that we could expect a dry and fast course. I've heard some people say that the course, if dry, would be too easy. How do you think about that?
I wouldn't say it's too easy. I would just say it's going to be very different. I think maybe it's easy in the fact that it's not going to be as, like, the weather wouldn't play a factor. So that what would make it really hard is the high speed and having it be similar to a road race and having groups of riders pushing each other really hard versus maybe more of an individual race with the mud. I think either way, it's going to be a really hard race.
Issam, we just heard Madigan Munro speak about the course. We spoke with her a while ago. By now we've seen some pictures from the course. We know a bit more about the weather conditions. What can you tell us about the course?
Well, it's definitely not what we have seen earlier this last year in the beginning of the season. That was a totally different circumstances. It was muddy, very tough. What we see now is a very fast parkour, but the profile of the parkour is not flat, and that is something to keep an eye out for, because you can use a lot of your power, but there are still some tough climbs in it. And yeah, it's gonna be a very fast race in my opinion. If the weather is gonna stay like this, then obviously it's going to be a very fast race, and that's going to be very interesting for the Worlds, because I think that's gonna put that element in of strategy and a little bit more tactical racing.
The course for now indeed looks very fast, but that's not really the truth to it, because I've heard from people who are there that the temperature difference between day and night is more than 20 degrees Celsius. That means that during the night the ground freezes, and this means that there's usually a thin layer of frozen water on the grass, so ice, that melts, but how much it melts depends on how much the sun goes on it. If it stays in the shadow, you get this situation where the top layer is melted, but the layer underneath is frozen, and that we've seen that earlier as well in World Championships longer times ago, and that always made for interesting racing. So that in a way is for now not guaranteed. If the sun goes on, then you are most likely to get a fast course, but with the current conditions, we should not expect a Formula 1 track as we saw in the early phases of this season, for instance in Bredene, but indeed the course should make for some tactical racing. The first race we will discuss is the men's elite race. That could be a tactical one as well then, but I would like to hear from you guys who you guys think is the top favorite in your opinion.
For me, I think it has to be Pidcock, you know. He's really shown on these big days that he can really find his form and step up the level. And yeah, we didn't see him taking the win last weekend at all, but I think perhaps in Flandrian Cross, if he had not slipped out in that corner, we may have seen him on the top step of the podium. And then, yeah, I think in Hoogerheide, there was rumour he did some very hard training as well around this race, and I'd fully expect him to really step it up a level as we've seen him before in the big races. So Pidcock is my pick from me.
I think the biggest name that pops up in my head is obviously Tom Pidcock. I think that this is his main goal. Obviously the big two are not here, but he is going to be participating, and you know, the preparation has been going quite well. I think that this is his most important goal of his cyclocross campaign, and he worked, you know, everything that he was doing was just to be good on in the worlds, and that is obviously going to be one of the main favorites by the men's category.
I can only agree with Issam. I mean, Tom Pidcock looking to be the favorite. It will be very interesting to see what the Belgian men are able to produce and how well they put on a challenge for him. But I expect a Pidcock that is at very good form as he aimed to be here at the World Championships. He should just have that comfortable percent over the rest of them.
So all three of you have named Tom Pidcock as the favorite, the clear favorite also, but personally I don't think that his season deserves to be crowned with him as the top favorite for this World Championships. Or well, in a way it does. He should be considered to be the main favorite, and that is because he has had a very strong season. He was usually the rider that was behind Van Aert when Van Aert was riding. I do indeed agree with what was said, that he did a lot of hard work this weekend, that he probably was a bit tired in Hamme and Hoogerheide. But if we look at the total picture, I think Pidcock is maybe a bit better than the rest, but the level was not significant that I think it's fair to speak about the fact that Pidcock is the clear favorite. I think he has this percentage point ahead of the rest, or at least in my opinion. But I see a close group of riders behind him, or a group of riders close behind him. And then I personally think about riders as Elie Iserbyt, as Toon Aerts. Of course, Quinten Hermans would have been on that list, but he tested positive for COVID-19 and will not be participating in the World Championships. How do you guys see that? Do you see Pidcock as the clear favorite that's going to demolish everyone? Or do we need to be more cautious about that?
Yeah, so I think it will be interesting with the slightly different kind of non-European parcours. Right now it looks like it could be a pretty fast race, and I think some of the fast starters we'll see really up there as well, and I think Iserbyt, Van Turnhout, those two, and perhaps Toon Aerts as well, we'll also see kind of fighting it out in the front. I don't think Pidcock will ride away. He's not kind of done this previously this year so far, but I think it will be after a couple of laps the race will settle down a bit, and then we might see Pidcock pushing on and dropping the opposition.
Yeah, I do think that there is definitely a gap, but it also doesn't require too much to close it, especially when it's a faster parcours. It's just harder to make the differences, and a lot of it's going to depend on when you're going to make mistakes and how are you able to pull out the gap. I do think Pidcock has slightly better papers because I think he is able to make up for them a bit easier than the rest of them.
Let's go past that list of outsiders then. First rider, Elie Iserbyt. Issam, well, how do you see his chances? How do you think he should tackle the race?
Well, he should be starting well. That's something he sometimes struggles with. So I think for him it's going to be key to be at the front and try to force something. I mean, if they're all just going to be sitting in the wheel of Pidcock in the last lap, that's not going to be the smartest decision, because we have seen Pidcock is also very fast in the last lap, and his sprint is phenomenal as well. So you don't want to do that. If you're willing to beat Pidcock, you need to beat him with the weapons that you have. And I think if Iserbyt is going to make it a fair 1v1, it's going to be a bit difficult. But if he can use the guys that he has around him with the Schweik, maybe even a Twan, then everything is possible. And then there are going to be a little bit more chances for Iserbyt. And I think he has been doing a very good season. Definitely, one of his best seasons maybe at the elites, and it wouldn't surprise me if he will be very close for this title.
Iserbyt, after the World Cup in Hogerheide, in his interview said the Belgians should take lessons from older championships. They need to appoint me as their clear leader, maybe with Toon Aerts as co-leader. What do you think about that comment then?
I mean, it's tactical from him. I mean, he's probably one of the last guys to say that, considering what he has done in the European Championships. And Iserbyt is always a guy that relies on team tactics. If you look at the way he was, he's doing the same thing with Paul Sousa. They have to ride for him, but when it comes, if he needs to return the favor, he doesn't do it that often. And that is Iserbyt that we know. There's nothing wrong with that. He wants to win, and I think that for himself, he thinks that this is what he needs to do to make sure that he is going to have a greater chance of winning. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a smart comment, but I think that he wants to try to put some pressure on Sven van Turnhout, the head of the Belgium selection.
I do think that it's a smart comment. Iserbyt is building a wall around him. I mean, he can say after the after the World Championships, if anything goes wrong in terms of team tactics and there is no clear team tactic made, he can say, oh well, but last week in Hogerheide I said that we should play team tactics. I said that they should have put the eggs in my basket. And if they do that and he does win, people will say that it was justified. If they do it and he fails, well, then we'll be having a similar conversation as after the European Championships, where it did seem that Iserbyt was the leader, but at the end of the day there was no leader at all, and Iserbyt rode back Van der Haar, and Van der Haar eventually took the European title ahead of 6-7 Belgians. So I think Iserbyt has done a good job by making that comment, at least for himself, getting some leverage. I don't think that the Belgians should be riding as a team generally throughout most of the race, because what more can they do on this super wide course than just annoy Van der Haar and Pidcock? I mean, it's not easy to let a gap fall here because there's hardly any technical sections. I also have my doubts about Aerts and Iserbyt. I don't really see Aerts going to be a domestique for Iserbyt. They have too much of a rivalry themselves. So I don't think that should be a goal in the first place. Of course, if Iserbyt at some point has a gap of 5 seconds, or no matter who the Belgian is, the other Belgians should not try and close that gap with the rest in the wheel. But I also don't expect big team plans where you have, like on the road, riders working for each other. I also don't expect that. But it's always the same. Every year we talk about the Belgian Bloc. Twan, what do you think? Belgian Bloc this year, yes or no?
No. There isn't the element of trust that's needed, I think. As was mentioned before at the Vanberg at the European Championships, Iserbyt riding back Van der Haar. It's one of the very few opportunities in a season to show Aerts, to show the other Belgians that you're like willing to work for the national team, and the other one is like the World Championships. And I think Aerts will look at that and be like, I mean, I'll like half do it, but if it really comes down to it, and Van der Haar is in my wheel, for example, maybe with Pidcock not so much, but I'm just going to ride there and I'm going to try and win that world title, even if it can bow back at us with a second and third place instead of one world title.
I can, however, see team tactics being played within the Belgian team if you were in a situation where there was a lot of Paul Sousa riders at the front, Laurens Schweik, Michael van Toerenhout, now also Toon van der Bos, who is the replacer of Quinten Hermans. And Michael van Toerenhout, in my opinion, is one of the outsiders Tom, I wonder what you think. Do you think that Van Toerenhout can become world champion? Because Van Toerenhout isn't a winner. He's always up there, always consistent, but he usually doesn't win a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a really open race, obviously without Van der Poel and Van Aert. And I think it could be someone like Van Toerenhout who just has a really, say, the ride of their life and takes the jersey. Would not surprise me. And I think he's shown this year, he kind of took his biggest win in Namur. And that was obviously a race which was really tipped for Pidcock. And I think I wouldn't say he can't do it. I think he's shown he's got the speed. And if he can put it all together on the day, perhaps we could see Van Toerenhout coming home with the rainbow bands.
Next on our list of outsiders, Lars Van Der Haar. Twan, what do you think about the chances of Van Der Haar?
If we would be looking at the Tabor and European Championships period, I would be really scared if I was like some of the Belgians and Pidcock of Van Der Haar on this kind of course, but he just doesn't quite look like he is completely there. But he is still going to be very solid and someone that you should expect to see at the front. But I don't think he's quite at that top level that he had in that period.
But don't you think he looked extremely strong in Hogerheide?
I think he looked good, very good as well. But I still think that relative to the rest, he doesn't have that extra little bit that he had in Tabor and the European Championships.
I do think that we will see an extremely strong Lars Van Der Haar. I think that Lars Van Der Haar will be probably my first rider to set behind Pidcock if I was going to make a prediction. Because Van Der Haar, he's always there at championships. I mean, of course, there's a couple of exceptions, but this year, European Championships, prime example, it was his first win of the season. His second win was just a week later in Tabor. I agree, following his knee issues that he had in Kortrijk, it wasn't as good anymore, but the last couple of weeks, third place in Hulst, very strong ride in my opinion. Then in Herentals, fifth when he was just preparing for the Dutch Championships, where he easily won. In Hamme he got fourth and he wasn't actually really going for it there either. And then in Hogerheide he really was there despite the crash and running the barriers, and especially that. He ran the barriers every lap, losing 3-4 seconds there, and he made that up lap after lap. I think that Lars Van Der Haar is definitely one of the riders that's going to do good, because I always remember Van Der Haar as this championship rider. In Louisville, the Worlds, he was really good there. The course should suit him. And on other Worlds, he was also good. From the top of my head, I remember the World Championships in Zolder, where he almost became world champion. I count on Van Der Haar. I expect that Van Der Haar, even against the best Pidcock, will be a serious opponent. If we continue our list, we come to the teammate of Lars Van Der Haar, Toon Aerts. What are our expectations for him?
In my opinion, a little bit of a dark horse. I don't think, he can always ride quite well. Championships for him is also something that he can do quite well on. I feel that he is always can find something in his back pocket in a championship. Always rides even if he's in a lost position. But it's difficult. I don't really see it for Aerts. I don't see the. He was very good in Hogerheide. Obviously, he had that issue with the barrier and lost a lot of time, but then came back quite quickly. Last lap wasn't really there, but obviously, he felt that it was not going to be worth it to try to bridge that gap. It was, was not going to be able to. He just came short, and then just let the last lap completely go. But yeah, I think for Aerts, definitely a top 5 is possible, a podium is possible, but I just don't see him go on the podium with the stripes on Sunday.
For Aerts, I have the same as with Van Der Haar. He's always good at championships, as you said, Issam. And I think this course should suit him, because we know that Aerts is a rider who makes a lot of mistakes on the technical sections. What I saw in terms of form in Hamme and Hogerheide was pretty promising for Aerts. But indeed, I don't necessarily see him become world champion. What do you think, Twan?
It's just a very hard course for him to actually do it. Like I think they need to make like a super tough race out of it, and then he just needs to find that one moment where everyone is like half sleeping and trying to like freewheel a bit, and then he needs to go. And I think that is his biggest opportunity, but you still have to find it.
But don't you think that the course is something for Ackert? It has a big climb. It doesn't have that many technical features. It has a set of stairs, which is good for Ackert. And compare it to the cross he won, that was in Zonhoven. That was also a fast course. Made one mistake, that was a crash there, came back, and then indeed found that perfect moment. And that is something that Ackert does more. Find the perfect moment to attack and catch the others by surprise.
I think only championship is just very tough. There will be like maybe like 1 or 2 moments where it's possible, but you really have to grab them. So there definitely there is possibilities, but it's just very hard for a rider like ours to win on such a quick parkour.
A last name that is considered to be one of the favorites is Laurens Schweik, the winner of Hamme. He hasn't had a great season. Tom, what do you think that Laurens Schweik can do here? Can you see him actually become world champion?
Yeah, I think, again, he can be another outsider. He's shown he can really have the level on some of the big days. Previously Belgian champion, for example. And I know that victory in the Flandrian Cross will have really given him some good confidence coming into this weekend. And yeah, like you said, he's stepped up his game in the last few weeks. 4th in Flamanville as well, I think. And yeah, potentially could be an outsider for the podium. Although I think he prefers a bit more heavier parkour. So it will be interesting how it plays out in Fayetteville this weekend.
I think we've now discussed the main riders who are considered to be the candidates to get a medal. Do you guys have any dark horses for a good result? And with a good result, I mean getting a podium or outside shot at the podium, or is it really these guys?
In my opinion, I don't really see someone battling it out other than the names that we already have mentioned for a podium at least. I mean, for the top 5, always, everything is possible and crashes are there, the mechanical problems are there as well, so that is always a thing. But other than the names that we have mentioned for a podium, I don't really see it happen that someone else will squeeze his way through to get on that podium. I don't see it happen.
Maybe not for a podium, but any dark horses for a top 10?
Well, I can kick this off. I don't think it will be really a surprise, even without the lack of Dutch and Belgian riders. I think Felipe Orts will certainly be in and around the top 10, and I guess maybe he might even be hoping for kind of top 5 finish. He's just been knocking on the door of the top 5 recently, so I would definitely give a tip for the Spaniard Felipe Orts.
Well, it's going to be interesting what Hecht is going to do. Obviously on own soil, the Americans obviously going to be very motivated to have a good result here in Fayetteville. So I think for him that's definitely going to be very important to be doing well. So I think he will try everything to get at least in the top 10 and show himself at the front maybe in the beginning of the race. Other than that, yeah, interesting to see what Philippe Orts will do. And just the usual suspects that normally are a bit outside of the top 10 are now having a chance to get a top 10 maybe on such a big, podium. I think Joshua Dubois is someone that is probably looking for a top 10. Kevin Kuhn has been riding quite well, so there are some names that are able to get a top 10, and that will be interesting to see how that will play out as well.
Personally, I could see Clément Venturini be in that list as well. He's been doing pretty well in the last couple of races. Maybe not as great, couple of races with bad luck as well, but could definitely see him in the top 10. And if I look further down the list, personally I'm interested to see what Eric Brunner can do, the American. Let's see what his countryman Caleb Swartz has to say about the chances of Eric Brunner.
Yeah, I mean, Eric is an incredible rider. Eric was a rider I wished, he made his decisions for himself and was doing what was best to not come to Europe. But he was one person who I wished I could have seen race in Europe, because I really just wanted to see how well he could do, honestly. I definitely should not discredit Eric. I'm mostly going off Gage's great race there last time, and same with Curtis. Both incredible riders, and it's hard to say what happens when you take 6 weeks off from racing to train. I mean, but you don't forget how to race your bike, and if you're accumulating all that fitness and all that rest, I mean, you can show up and do some pretty incredible things at Worlds. So I think there's no reason Eric wouldn't be able to have just a pretty incredible finish.
Time for some predictions here for the men's race. Twan, what do you think?
I think a victory for Tom Pidcock, a second place for Toon Aerts, and third for Lars Van Gaal.
So my prediction is Pidcock, Van Issem, and then I'm going Michael van Zonnhout for third place on the podium.
I have a feeling Pidcock is not going to be champion, and I don't know why. The facts are there, everything is there. He should be the main favorite, but there's something that I just feel that is just not going to be going the way he wanted to go, and just not going to have his day. I think Van der Haar is going to be the world champion, and then second for Pidcock, and then third Elisabeth.
Issam, I think I have that feeling as well about Pidcock. It just hasn't exactly been going his way, and that is something that, of course, on the day itself can happen. As said, I believe that Pidcock is the strongest rider here. I just wonder if things will come together for him. I will be predicting him for the victory ahead of Elisabeth, and then third place again for Toon Aerts. Let's then talk about the women's race. There, 2 riders who aren't there. The number 2 of the UCI ranking and World Cup, Denise Betsma, had fever, decided not to travel. Annemarie Worst, the runner-up of last year's World Championship, out with COVID. Bad news. But for us at least, we are looking probably at the battle Brandt-Vos, regardless of the riders who aren't there.
Yeah, I think these are the 2 big names, Brandt and Vos, especially now we're missing Betsema and Worst. But I also think that I believe it's Catablanca Vash is riding up in the elites this year. And yeah, I think she can also be an outsider for a medal and even a win, perhaps. But yeah, I really think it's the 2 big favorites definitely are Brandt and Vos. And I fully expect them to be a 1-2. But perhaps third place, maybe a bit more open.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Of course, very unfortunate that riders have to miss out on this occasion, because we have seen this season that on the day that it went very well for Annemarie Worst, she was actually able to take victory, and then she was able to challenge deep into races. Of course, there's also outsider factor, a few of them dropping out so they can make the race very interesting, but indeed the main 2 favorites are Brandt and Vos.
And out of those 2, who in your opinion is the main favorite?
I think it's a tough one to call, but if you had to make me take my pick, I think the experience of Vos will pay off in this situation, so I'm going for Marianne Vos.
It's just very hard, I think, on a parkour like this to get rid of Marianne Vos, because you're going to have to try so much, but every time you try more and she holds on, yeah, she comes closer to the sprint and you're a little bit more tired. So I think Marianne Vos has to be the favorite for the women's race.
Issam, who are you backing?
I lean more towards Vos, but Brandt is someone that will always fight till the end, and if she can crack Vos, then there is always a chance. But I think it's very hard. I think if Vos can go till the last round in the wheel of Brandt and is able tactically to play it smart, and we know with the experience that Vos has, she can do that. Then I feel that Vos is just going to be that little bit better and be able to bring it home.
In my opinion, it's very fair that we only look at these 2 riders for the main battle for the win. Some stats: Marianne Vos this season won 56% of the races she started. that means 5 out of 9 races. Lucinda Brandt won 17 out of 27 races, equaling 63%. These two have really been the dominant riders this season. Most of the time, the only riders that could come close were the likes of Fem van Empel, Puk Pietersen and Sherin van Anrooy. They are racing in the women's under 23 category, so I think it's fair that we only look at these two. I agree with what you say that Vos is the clear favorite, or at least has the clear advantage in a sprint. But what can Brandt possibly do here? How can she do this? Because she knows, if I go to the finish with Vos, I'm going to lose, as probably 95% or maybe even 99% of the peloton thinks. But it's also so hard to get rid of Vos, as Twan already mentioned. But what can Brandt do? How should she start this race?
I think she should go fast in the beginning and try to make sure that's going to be a selective group. And then just hope that maybe a very good Vash is going to be there in the wheels and let Vash go. Just don't try to let Vos just work that little bit extra, and maybe try in the last 2 laps put her under pressure. And you never know. I think she can play tactically. I don't think that is something that Gerben de Knecht wants to see, but maybe you have to gamble just that little bit and just hope that Vos is going to be working more than she is. Sit in the wheel a little bit more. Try. You have to try something. I mean, if you're not going to do that and just let Vos to be in your wheel for the whole race, we know what the outcome will be. So she has to try something, and maybe it's not the most... It's not... I would say that it is not going to be the least controversial if you're going to let someone from another country right away, but then just let Vos clean it up for you and don't do it yourself. And then after that, try an attack and try to break Vos.
But does it have to be Vash? Can she not also start a bit slower, sit in the wheel of Vos, and basically pull the reverse card on Vos? Because she tried to do that in Hogerheide, actually. It was Brandt waiting a bit, and we saw that Vos wasn't too happy to do a lot of work in the beginning. But what I did see was because Brandt was sitting in the wheel of Vos, where normally when other riders attack, Brandt is the one who closes the gap. This time it was Vos who closed the gaps. If she doesn't go out super quickly, in my opinion, even in the absence of Worst and Betsema, I still see a group at the front with 3 or 4 Dutch women and then Vash and maybe 1 or 2 other riders. And in that case, it could be someone like Alvarado, or perhaps a good Kastelein, or Manon Bakker, or Inge van der Heijden. One of these riders could then see an opportunity, and then both riders could be like, hey, I'm not doing it. Hey, I'm also not doing it. Or perhaps Vos thinks, well, I don't care, it's an orange shirt. I will react. Because it's always, you need to make a decision. Personal interest or country interest. And those will conflict. And, I mean, it depends who you ask, what they will say. Sven Nys, the team manager of Brandt, probably will say, let Vash ride. Gerben de Knecht, the coach of Lucinda Brandt for the World Championships, will say, whatever you do, do not let Vash ride. Vash is the only one you should really keep an eye on out. Make sure that she doesn't win. So I think that could provide us with some interesting opportunities. But on the other hand, I still think that if we go into the final lap with a bigger group, the acceleration that Vos and Brandt can put in, as we saw in Hogerheide, is in my opinion significantly good, that it doesn't matter with how many riders they go into the final lap. These will be the main 2 riders. What do you think, Twan?
Yeah, of course, these 2 are the main 2 riders, and I think for Brandt, you try and push the pace early, and if it doesn't work, you just sit back, hope that other people make it a little bit hard for Vos, sit on her as you guys suggested already, and then put everything into one attack and hope it sticks.
I feel like that's the only thing Brandt can do, and Vos can gamble on more cards and therefore, in my opinion, is slightly ahead of Brandt, but I expect a great race. And don't forget, if we go back to the first race of Vos of the season, that was Waterloo. There we saw a great battle between these two, and Vos overtook Brandt on a place where you normally would say that's not possible. I would be very interested to see what happens, because Brandt is somebody who does not let you pass easily. she will shut the door on you with this stonehead section at the end. If Vos is ahead there going into that, I see Brandt pull some crazy move to try and come alongside. I think this is going to be a cracker of a race, not an anticlimax as we saw at the Dutch Championships and Rugve. This is going to be a thriller, could be one of the best races of the weekend, even of the season. Maybe, okay, I'm not going to exaggerate. I'm not going to say of the century, but it's going to be a good one. I feel it. In terms of the other riders, we have already mentioned Vos a couple of times. Do you see Vos then as the clear favorite for the third place, or are there more opportunities, or are there more other riders?
Yes, certainly. I think firstly, another Dutch contender will be Alvarado. Yes, she's not shown, had some injury problems this year, I believe, but previously multiple world champion, and I think she will be coming back fighting as she returns to form, hopefully in time for this race. And of course, we couldn't forget the local American rider, Clara Huntsinger. I think maybe this course might not be really suited to her, in my opinion, but for sure, on her home soil, she's going to be looking to give those American fans something to cheer about, and potentially one of the best medal prospects for the USA in their home championships.
I mean, obviously, with the fact that Betsema and Vos are not going to be there, it's opening up a little bit. I think that Vos definitely is the main woman for that third spot and for a podium. And then, you have to look behind, maybe an Alvarado that can save her season with a podium, in my opinion. Kastelein hasn't been riding quite well. Bakker is finding herself a little bit at the end of the season. Persico, obviously, after winning that Italian championship, is feeling quite confident and is riding also very well the last part of the season. And then we have to just look at what's going to happen. I think Magali Rochette is probably going to be motivated as well, but we have to see what she is able to bring to the table and see what comes out of her. I think that she will be motivated, but you don't only need motivation, but you need also very good shape, and that is going to be key for this race.
Twan, what do you think about the chances of Magali Rochette for potentially getting a podium?
I think it's just a very talented rider, of course, and there's definitely opportunities. The problem is, I think that, I don't know, it's just a bit hard. Casablanca Vos currently, I think, comfortably sitting in third in that group. It's really thinned out, of course. I don't know, it's a weird one.
Yeah, again, another North American rider. I think certainly will benefit from the more local conditions. Again, it's a bit of a travel down from Canada, but I'm aware she's been in and around Fayetteville for a while now, and skipped the last couple of races in Europe since the national championships. So, yeah, it will be interesting if that plays to her advantage. I'm sure she's been able to get some good training in the legs. And yeah, I'm sure she'll be really aiming high, but whether she can reach the podium, I'm not so sure about. Perhaps maybe top 5 finish for her.
Yeah, of course, it's a bit of a guess, not a gamble. It's a guess to see how Rochette will do after a long time without competition. Will be interesting to see. And I mean, if I come back to Vos, I do indeed see her as a favorite for third spot, but it's actually crazy that she is skipping the under 23 category, racing with the elite. Was if she was going to be racing in the under 23 category, she would probably need to settle for third or fourth, which is the same place as she's looking to be considered for in the elite race. It's pretty crazy if you think about it that way. Tiny start field here. I think in terms of riders for a potential shot at the medal, we've had it. I don't believe in the chances of Sanne Kant. Course is nothing for her, and in general her season hasn't been great once again. It's kind of the reality that we need to set into, or maybe more the Belgians. But maybe one of you thinks differently about that?
Yeah, so Kant took the national title in Belgium again. Was it, I think, the 13th consecutive title, I think. And she kind of is able to pull that one out of the bag every year. And yeah, multiple world champion as well. But again, her results just haven't quite been there these last few years. So perhaps with a bit of a weakened field, we might see her more in and around the top 5 positions whereas previously maybe she would have been only looking inside the top 10. But yeah, I think you can say Kant could be a bit of an outsider for that third place spot on the podium.
A last name that is a must mention, Clara Huntsinger. She came on the podium here in the World Cup earlier this season. Maybe not her type of weather conditions, but what do we think that she can do?
I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot about that name. It's definitely someone that, if it's going to be a faster parkour, that is not going to suit her, but who knows, if they start just a little bit slower because of that championship and being a little bit nervous, she's going to have some time to get to the front. And then who knows, but realistically looking at it, I think if she finishes in the top 5, it would be already a very, very good result, and she would really surprise me if she's able to fight for the podium. It is in her ability, but I think if it's going to be a fast race, it's just not going to be happening, I think.
And I said the final name, but Twan, I will be interested to hear what you think about Helene Clausel. She's had a very good season, sometimes a bit inconsistent, but she's proven to do well in both fast and slow conditions.
Yeah, I think a very interesting name indeed, but probably more looking indeed at the top 5. If she can hit the right kind of form, it might just be one of those crazy good results for her.
Time for predictions then. 1, 2, 3. Twan, what do you think?
I think we'll see Marianne Vos winning ahead of Lucinda Brandt and Casablanca Vash to fill out the podium.
And like I said earlier, I'm going Vos with the experience first, second for Brand, and third Casablanca Vash.
Yeah, I wanted to say Vos, but I feel like I shouldn't be doing that. I will go for Brandt. And then second, Casablanca Vash, and then I think third, let's go with Vos. And it's going to be a very bad race for Vos then, I don't know.
I will be going with the win for Vos, and then Brandt, and then third place. I am going to just go with my hope, Magali Rochette. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it likely? No. But would I love it? Absolutely. Three names who you just didn't hear in our elite preview were the names of Van Empel, Van Anrooy and Pieterse, riders who have been at the front this season in the elite races a lot. They raced the under-23 championships here in Arkansas. Who out of these three names are you personally backing for the win?
I think on this kind of parkour, I would love to see what Van Empel can do. I think this is really something that suits her a little bit more than the other two Dutch women.
And do you think that because it's a fast course and that she has probably one of the best sprints out of the peloton, and that means that she can basically play the same role as Vos?
Yeah, definitely.
And what do you then think, Issam?
Yeah, I would maybe say before Hogerheide was happened, I would have said the same thing. But I think after Hogerheide, I have seen a very strong Puk Pieterse. And I think that Pieterse is maybe peaking at the right moment. That race was where also Van Empel was a very fast race, as we have seen. And Pieterse was able to, to pull when Vos and Brandt were there. Obviously, when the two went, she wasn't really able to answer. But then overtook Brandt again. Got beaten in the sprint, but that is not a real shame. I think that she got a lot of confidence out of that race in Hogerheide, and I think that Pieterse is definitely, in my eyes, maybe the clear favorite.
Yeah, I think so as well, that Hogerheide definitely gave Pieterse the confidence she might need for the World Championships. One disadvantage for her, no barriers on the course. I think without the barriers in Hogerheide, she would have been closer to Van Empel instead of around Brandt. Nevertheless, throughout the season, Pieterse has proven to be the best under-23 rider, or at least the most consistent. But Pieterse is always consistent. Van Empel has had these highs throughout the season. Of course, the World Cup wins are two of those days, in Val di Sol and in Flamanville. Those are crazy days, and if Van Empel has a day like that, it's very hard to beat her. Twan already mentioned it. She can count on her sprint, one of the best sprints of anyone in the peloton. But I think we should be in here for another cracking battle, because we haven't mentioned Van Anrooy a lot. Was briefly mentioned just now, but yeah, I mean, Van Anrooy has definitely been up there this season as well. Not as much in the spotlights, mainly because she has a bad start, but in the last couple of weeks the start has been okay, and of course she got a podium in Hamme. Maybe a bit less in Hogerheide, but that's what a double weekend can do with you. That second place in Hamme for me definitely shows that we should also not count out Van Anrooy. And yeah, I just think it's going to be a very open race, and it wouldn't surprise me if we go into the last lap with 3 riders together.
It's going to be hard for them to be with in a complete with 3 going into the last lap, because I think the way they have been riding with the elite women, they're not shy of going in a very hard pace. They all want to... I think Van Empel is the one that would be focusing more on the last lap, while Van Anrooy and Pietersen are more, they tend to, even mid-race, go just that little bit harder, just pull without really looking behind. I think they're more fearless in a way, with just trying everything to make sure that the one that is sitting in their wheel is going to crack. But then again, that is when the elite women are there, and they didn't have a lot of under 23 races where they raced against each other. So it's going to be just that little bit different, because those championships are always a bit harder, to have a guess of what's going to happen in it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of unknown and uncertainty. I think it's going to be a fantastic race, as I said earlier. But I think that what is key for Pietersen and for Van Anrooy is to ride with courage. They need to team up together. If they want to become world champion, they should not go into the final lap with a fresh Van Empel. They need to have tired her throughout the race. They need to play games with Van Empel. They need to put her under pressure on the technical sections, although Van Empel has good technique. But if you go to the final lap with 3 and Van Empel is still fresh, there's no way you're going to drop her with 1 acceleration. But if you have tired Van Empel and force her into the lead and then attack from behind her back on the climb, well, we already know they will take about 30 seconds to do that climb in the dry, which is quite a while, and it's pretty steep. So if you do that and she's already tired, then it's enough to make a difference. But if she's fresh there, well, then I don't think that there is anything you can do against Van Empel if she's fresh going into the final lap. We saw that in Flamanville, for instance, where Pietersen throughout the race arguably was a bit stronger, but eventually missed out on the win in the final lap. Of course, we can't ignore the other riders on the start list. There are 29 riders on the current start list. The start number will be a bit lower due to a couple of riders not racing. But who do we think behind these 3 leaders? Out of these names, who do we think can be the rider that, in case there is bad luck for one of the 3 top favorites, can take advantage of that and grab that 3rd place? Or if there's no bad luck, who do we see as serious contenders for top 5?
I think that with Burquier and Foucounet, the French are having a strong under 23 selection, and they will be definitely fighting for a top 5. It will be interesting to see what the British champion Harriet Hartman will do. I mean, that is definitely something that, see what she's going to bring, and obviously what the Americans will be able to do with America Munro and Katie Klaus. That is obviously also interesting to see if they can excel in their own country. And yeah, then you come to the names of maybe a Zimanova or a Schreiber. Those are also ones to watch for a potential top 5. But I mean, it depends really on the race. If it's going to be a very fast race from the start, I mean, they will be on their place quite quickly, and the one with the best shape will be trying to chase the 3 in front. And that's it. I hope that we're going to see some of the battles behind the 3, but I'm quite positive about it. That is probably going to be only the 3 in front that we're going to see, and that they kind of forget about the rest of the field.
Okay, time to make some predictions here then. Twan, you already said Van Empel is your big favorite. Will you also be going with her for the victory?
Yes, I will. Pietersen will be finishing 2nd, and Van Anrooy to complete the podium.
And what about you, Issam?
I will put my belief in Puk Pieterse for the win, and then second place for Shirin van Anrooy and third for Van Empel.
I will be going with Pieterse ahead of Van Anrooy and Van Empel. Let's talk about the men under 23 race. This is a race which is wide open. I think we can name 6 favorites for the win, or maybe even more. But if you guys would need to choose one name, Twan, who do you think is going to become world champion?
I think it's a very hard one, but I think I'll go with Thibaut Nys.
Why do you think that he's going to become world champion?
I think Thibaut Nys was also like very strong at the European Championships. He knows how to ride a tactical race, and he's very fast at the finish line. And I think he has come back quite okay from his injury, so I think he'll make a good impression.
And Issam, do you agree with that? Thibaut Nys, world champion?
Nah, it would surprise me if he would do that. That would be an extraordinary result from him. No, I think that we can look maybe at the Mees Hendricks is very strong. Ryan Kamp has been doing okay. In some occasions even very good. Cameron Mason, I think those are more the names to look at. I think that Nys, I have no idea why I have that feeling. It's maybe because of that he had some good races, but it was not only good races that I've seen from Thibaut Nys. There were some less convincing one, if I can put it like that. And to put him as a title contender is understandable, but I don't see him automatically be the main favorite to win in the under 23 category.
I think that Twan is right. I do believe in a nice world title, but I do not think by any chance he is the top favorite. I think that I am mainly looking at the Dutch riders. Last week in Hamme, Pim Ronhaar very, very strong. Ryan Kamp is also very good. He was with Verstringen. They were sprinting for the second under 23 place in Hogerheide. That was a second place behind Mees Hendricks, who won there. I personally am putting my money on Mees Hendricks. If I were to bet, I don't bet, but Mees Hendricks is, in my opinion, the favorite. He's had a very good season. He's always there at championships. He is in form. The course suits him. I am backing Mees Hendricks for the win, but I expect severe opposition from Kamp. Maybe not as much from Verstringen. I know Verstringen has been in good form, but I still don't really think this is a course for him. Van Der Puter hasn't had the form. Michels is having problems with his back. Wiesure, just don't see it. But we haven't mentioned Cameron Mason. Mason was second in Hamme. This year won the World Cup in Dendermonde. Do you guys believe in a world title for Cameron Mason as well?
Oh, I have mentioned him, and I think as well that he is definitely going to be one for the podium. I mean, he is. We have seen very good things from him this season, and a fast parkour is not something he dislikes, and he has the technical ability to get himself quickly through the corners, and he can maybe use that rivalry of Belgium-Netherlands to just sit a little bit behind, don't do a lot of work. And if we have a very big group, just try to make sure that you're out of the wind every time and don't do a lot of work. Let the others do everything for you, and then have a very good fast last lap. And then you never know. I see him actually as a dark horse for the title.
Of course, he did have a problem in Hogerheide, which forced him to retire. It was some issue with his body. Didn't say more about it, but he also said that it should be solved for the World Championships. Think this could be an extremely open race. I don't see anybody ride away from this. Personally, I already said my favorite is Mees Hendricks. Kamp and Ronhaar also made a good impression on me. Normally, I would have also put Jente Michels here, but since that issue with his back, it just didn't sound good. It said as just in the race, it all of a sudden was there. I've never had back issues, but it was super serious, and that just doesn't sound good either. It's a very good show that he put on there, and it was just to push away the pressure, because we do see injuries be made up the week before or the weeks before the World Championships. Not saying that that is the case. Of course, it would be very unfortunate for him because he has had a good second phase of the season. And I do believe that he did have back issues. He doesn't seem to me as the type that would make up a story for that. But yeah, I think personally Hendricks as favorite for the title, as I already mentioned a couple of times now. But Twan, you went with Thibaut Nys, but who do you see besides Nys as your riders that you will be watching for in terms of winning the title, standing on the podium?
I think there's just a lot of names there. There's a lot of Dutch guys. There's a lot of Belgians as well. I think Van Der Puter is just one of those guys that you always have to watch out for on the right day. Ronhaar, Kamp, Hendricks, as you guys already mentioned as well. All very good riders. I just don't think they have the same sort of sprint as Thibaut Nys, so I think he can ride a little bit more relaxed throughout the race.
I can see where you are coming from, and it is going to be an extremely open race. Let's listen to one of the riders who is participating, Scott Funston. He will tell us who he thinks is the top favorite in the men's under 23 category.
I haven't been up there in the front groups, but I mean, my guess would be Ryan Camp clearly is strong, and then Verstringen. I think that's Emily Verstringen. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's clearly on a good run of form, and him, and if Thibaut gets healthy, I'd say those guys would be the main competing for the podium. Maybe Cameron Mason, the Dendermonde ride was well, but I don't foresee that being kind of similar to the Fayetteville course. I guess if it's muddy, it takes a similar type of power profile, but pretty different courses.
A lot of names have been mentioned, and it's a lot of different riders, and that kind of makes it difficult for us to know what to expect. I mean, if you have 3-4 riders, it's easy to say, well, if it comes down to a sprint, this rider. But with 8 riders who can potentially become world champion, it's hard. But we do know that there are a couple of riders who will not be gambling on their sprint, probably Pim Ronhaar after losing the sprint for the World Cup victory. Kamp also doesn't really seem that confident about his sprint, but on the other hand, he won the European Championships in a sprint. A rider that will be gambling on his sprint is probably Thibaut Nys. Do you guys think that if you go into the last lap together with Thibaut Nys, that there is anyone who can beat him either on the road or in a sprint?
Yeah, that's gonna be tough. If he makes it to the last lap, and we know that he has a very good sprint in him, then it's going to be a little bit tougher. I would agree on that, but I just feel that he's not going to be playing. He's going to play a role, but he's not going to play that role to be in the last lap in that position and to fight for a podium. I don't see it happen. It can surprise me, and we are only predicting. It can always be that it will play out different than what we are saying right now. But yeah, I feel that it's just coming a little bit too early, and that it's just not going to be able to happen. And but if he managed to get in the last lap, for sure, he's going to be probably the most dangerous rider to take with you into a last lap.
I tend to agree with you, Issam. It's very hard to beat Thibaut Nys in a sprint. Also not impossible. We've seen major upsets, and it's a championship, so as you have said a lot of times on this podcast already, anything can happen, also in a sprint for the world title. We'll need to wait and see. A final name I would still like to touch upon myself is Nils Van Der Puter. He had a very good start to his season. The last couple of weeks, it's not really been there. He's also only raced the World Cup in the under-23 category. We don't really know if there's anything up behind the scenes, but to the best of our recollection, there's nothing that's going on with Nils Van Der Puter. Probably just not great form. But a rider like Nils Van Der Puter can always surprise at a championship, because at the end of the day, he's a last year under 23, and he is talented, as we've seen earlier in the season. Time for some predictions in this category as well. Twan, what do you think for the podium?
I think we'll see a Thibaut Nys World Championships ahead of Pim Ronhaar and Ryan Kamp.
And what do you think, Issam?
I will go with Ryan Kamp as the world champion. And then on second, Cameron Mason. Third, Mace Hendricks.
I will be going with Mace Hendricks ahead of Pim Ronhaar and Thibaut Nys. Let's talk about the junior men's category then. Throughout this season, David Haverdings has been the dominant rider in that category. Do you guys also see him as the clear favorite for the World Championships?
I mean, you cannot get around it. He was everywhere where he started almost. He has won. I think there were only 2 or 3 races where he wasn't able to win. And, for me, it's quite clear. It's the main favorite in Fayetteville. If he doesn't win, it's going to be a disappointment for him. And, based on the results and solely on the results, he's the clear favorite. If it's going to be a fast parcours, it's still going to be something for him. It's not that he's going to struggle a lot. So he has to do what he does best, and that's just dominate a race, be at the front, make sure that he doesn't make any mistakes, don't be nervous. And then I don't really see how he can lose. But, it's cyclocross in the end, so mechanicals can happen, and, everything is possible. But you would be mad if you wouldn't take him as the main favorite for this category.
Yeah, I think he has looked very solid throughout the year. Really putting a stamp on most of the races. And while some of them definitely have been close battles, he has come out of on top of most of them.
Haverdings this year has some pretty insane stats. I mean, he won 84% of the races he started. That means that he won 16 out of 19 races. Only in his first race of the season, Bredene, he was beaten. He had a bit of bad luck. On the Vanberg, he ended second behind Dox. And in Boom, he ended second behind Corsus. Jordi Corsus and Aaron Dox are the only riders this year to have won a junior race when David Haverdings was at the start. It's pretty insane. And I think that Haverdings, because of that, there's no way you can go around it, is the clear favorite. Issam, you said that you thought that only the victory counts for David Haverdings at the World Championships. When we spoke with him earlier, he said something else about that, so we'll listen to that right now.
I think after this season, a medal is good, and I'm happy with a medal, and it's just that little touch that it makes it 100% perfect the season if I win, but it's not it is a big goal, but if I not win and I get a medal, I'm also happy.
Now we're hearing from David. Let's hear who he thinks are the main favorites besides himself. Who will his main contenders be? Because we already spoke about David, that he had an insanely strong season. But now we'll also hear what he thinks about the other riders participating.
I think Aaron Dox is the most favorite guy, and I think Jordi Kors is also after the title of yesterday. That gives him a lot of motivation, I think, to ride good. And Luca Paletti, there are a lot of guys that can win, I think. Nathan Smith from the UK is also really strong. I think the biggest favorites are Aaron Dox, Jack Sprenger, and Nathan Smith.
Well, we just heard what David thinks. What do you think, Twan? Who will the main challengers for him be?
I think the main challenger for David Haverdings, it's of course it depends on the conditions of the course, but it probably is Nathan Smith. But there is quite a few guys, as he said as well, out there that can put up a very good fight.
I would indeed also tend to go for Smith. There were, as said, only 2 riders able to win a race when Haverdings was starting, but that could well have been 3 because Nathan Smith was leading in Namur. 15 seconds was the gap until we had a double puncture. I mean, that's just super unfortunate. I think he could have won that race without it. I was there. He looked super strong. That course might be a bit heavier than what we're going to now. We've already said enough about the course and the potential that it has, what can happen there. But yeah, I am indeed looking at Nathan Smith. But it's a championship. There's a ton of things that can go wrong. I mean, it's almost a thing now. Anything can happen. Well, in a way, it's still true. You can say it as much as you want, but you can dance around it. Anything can actually happen. And if we look at it, for Smith, he's had a lot of bad luck this season, including at the British Championships. So I hope that his bad luck is now empty, and I think that Smith is one of the few riders that can come very close to Haverdings. Potentially needs a muddy course for that. Doesn't look like one. But Issam, outside of Smith and Haverdings, who are your picks and what do you think that they can do?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you look to Jordi Courses, the Belgian champion, has been going quite well the last couple of races. The only one that was able to follow Haverdings in Hamme. Hamme is obviously a parcours that was, a little bit faster than other races that we have seen, but that can be a factor. I think Courses has, having the momentum, and it's a world championship. Everything can happen. I think him, he is definitely one of the guys to watch out for. Other names, I think the French guy, Luca Paletti, also a guy, has been doing quite a good season. Some very outstanding results as well. Hasn't been winning races when Haverdings and the others are there, but he has always been up there. And I think for a podium, he's definitely, a contender, and for the top 5 for sure.
Yeah, Lesseur was up there in Flamanville, second, in absence of the Belgians. But I think we have to mention it. Luca Paletti, the Italian, he was one of the potential outsiders for the title, or at least a medal. But Paletti, who ended on the podium of the European Championships, is not participating. He is in quarantine because there was a positive test within the Italian team, and that meant that the close contacts who haven't received the booster vaccine are in quarantine. So that's no Paletti there. It's a shame. I do agree that Lesseur is a dangerous man, but personally I'm tending more towards Courses and Docks. This weekend in Hamme, Courses was strong. He was staying with Haverdings, although I think that Haverdings didn't go all out until the sprint. Haverdings, I think, wanted to see, can I also win a race in a sprint if it's possible? But Courses, first year, became Belgian champion, has a very good technique. I think that Courses is definitely one of the riders who can get a medal. But Twan, do you think that Courses as a first year will be able to cope with the pressure? Or do you think that might even not be as big of a factor because the second years don't have the experience of racing a world championship?
Yeah, I think in that way, indeed, they do have kind of equal footing of not having experienced too many championships yet at, more international level. And I think, if you're able to become Belgian champion in the junior category, you are usually one of the guys that's up there, and I think he dealt with the pressure well during that race, so I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do at the World Championships.
And if you would need to pick a lead Belgian rider in the result, would you be going with Courses, Docks, or someone else?
I think you let all of them ride for their own best result, and you try to encourage them to not ride against each other, because helping each other out a little bit can help your own race as well, by being able to sit on Haverdings when he has to close a gap on one of the other guys, for example. But I think on the faster courses, maybe Alan Docks is the best out of the three.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily meaning as leader, I meant more in terms of a result. And then I tend to agree with you. Docks on the faster courses has been a bit better. I know the Belgians are pretty charmed by Docks because he's been very good in the newcomers category. Personally, I haven't really seen it anymore the second part of the season from Docks. He was always struggling a bit. He didn't look good at the Belgian Championships. So I think that for Docks, he's tipped from within inside a lot. That he's always there at championships, but I feel like people might be stuck a bit at the narrative of the newcomers category. Docks is good, Docks is a winner, he's always there. And that for this season, personally, I haven't really seen it except at the European Championships. Doesn't mean that it's not possible, but I think that these are definitely a couple of dangerous riders. I was also thinking about another Belgian, Victor van den Berge, but Van den Berge has not really been that great the last recent weeks. So that's also somebody who I keep in the back of my head when I look at the potential good result. Do you have any other riders, Issam?
I think it will be interesting to see what the American Jack Sprenger can do. I personally think it's going to be tough to get in a top 5, but you never know when you are in your own country with the support of the nation, and I think that will always be a plus for him. He will have that advantage, even though it's a small advantage, but it's still, for some they can really get a big boost from that. And his result in Dendermonde was quite impressive with the second place. His European campaign wasn't bad at all, and I'm looking forward to see what he can do. It would be very good for American cyclocross if he's able to fight with the guys up front and fight for a top 5 or even a podium.
I think it will be difficult for Spranger indeed. You're right, Issam. But who can we hear better from than Ian Akert? He is the runner-up at the Pan American Championships, which was won by Jack Spranger. He's been racing against him for quite a while now. So let's hear what Ian Akert thinks about the chances of Jack Spranger.
He is another one for sure up there. I've been racing him since September, and he could definitely, he's got the power for sure. He's got the skill, even though the course is lacking a little bit, maybe. Yeah, I believe he could also be top 5, definitely fighting for the podium. I believe he still has front row start, so that's a huge help.
For me, Spranger's season has been just a bit too inconsistent for me to really consider him to be one of the main favorites for a podium. Of course, he will be up there. I think he will be fighting for top 5, but the consistency for me hasn't been there to see him as a really big contender for one of the podium places, but he can surprise us. And whilst we're talking about Americans, I've heard Frank O'Reilly being tipped as well from that selection. Haven't really seen a lot from him, to be honest, but I mean, probably the talent is there. And when we're at North Americans, it will be interesting to see how they deal with the fact that they weren't able to race for a couple of weeks following the final race that they did until now. For most of them, that was the Herentals. And one of them is Ian Akert, who we just heard from. He is aiming for a top 10, maybe a top 15. He's been on the podium of some Belgian races as well. These Belgian races are the ones that gave Spranger really the attention. So what do we think that Ian can do then?
Well, he can surprise us for sure. I think that it is realistic that he's able to fight for the top 10. I think that the top 5 will be tough, but then again he has that advantage that he went overseas quite early. He is already there in the continent, while the others they have to make that big trip. Some are not really good with handling that and don't really know how to cope with that. I don't think everybody was going to the States already. For some, it's maybe even their first time. So you don't really know how the Europeans will handle that, and that can always play in his hand. And obviously, without that, he has the abilities to be able to get a top 10 and even fight for a top 5. Why not?
And I mean, Akert needed to get in a rhythm, get used to things in his early races here, the World Cups. But after that, 6th in Zolder, 2 podiums in Gullegem and Herentals, 2nd at the Pan American Championships, won a couple of races on that side of the ocean. I think this is another first year who is strong. A lot of very strong first years, perhaps due to the fact that the second years don't really have experience as a benefit. But personally, I don't expect him on the podium, but he could be a rider in the top 10. And I think with that, we've discussed all the names that are up there for a podium finish. So time for predictions. What do you guys think for places 1, 2, and 3? Twan, go first.
I have David Haverdings as the winner ahead of Nathan Smith and Aaron Dox.
And what do you have, Issam?
I will go with Haverdings first place and then Nathan Smith in second. Just hoping that for him it will be a very good day. And then Corsius in third, but I think that, he has a very big shot of winning, but, we will see what happens. I think that is the top 3 I will go for.
I mean, most people go for Haverding Smith. Our preview, which we posted on our Instagram, it shows Helen Wyman has Haverding Smith, Van den Berg as podium. Jens Dekker has Haverdings Doc Smith. Elodie Kuiper has Haverdings Lesseur Corsus, so there's a bit of variation there. If we look at Ian Akert, the rider who was participating, he has Haverding Smith Spranger. I have the same as Issam, Haverdings Smith courses, but just for the sake of it, I will swap courses with my number 4, Les Sur. So my prediction on the podcast will be Haverdings Smith and Les Sur. This season there's been one dominant rider in the junior women's category, Zoe Buckstead. She won all junior women's races she started, even won a race with the elites, was only been beaten by another junior once this year in Overijse. Who do you guys think that can stop her, or do we need to conclude that without bad luck, nobody can stop her?
Without bad luck, no. With bad luck, yes, I can see her lose, but without, I think then, she needs to have a very bad day, in my opinion. I think that she has been shown that she's very strong, didn't lose from Bentveld a single time. And, I mentioned Bentveld immediately because that is the second woman behind her. That, those are the two that we have to look towards. And I think that Buckstead definitely has the upper hand there. And it will be interesting to see how that race will go, because I think we will all be surprised if it's not going to Buckstead, and there will be a different winner there at the women junior category. So I personally think that it will be very hard for the others to beat Buckstead at the World Championships.
I can only agree with this. Buckstead, the clear favorite, even after her struggles with COVID, coming back quite strongly. So not really putting her position in any doubt.
Twan, a couple of times this season you've already said Buckstead Bentveld, you can already fill it in before the race is even ridden. You think Buckstead can be filled in already before the World Championships? Do you think the same about Bentveld?
I think Bentveld, it's not quite as 100% certain, but there is a high likelihood of her becoming second. Every time she has struggled with getting that second place or winning when Buckstead wasn't there, she still does manage to come out on top, which I think shows that she still has that 1% that she needs even on a bad day.
I think that Bentveld would have faced opposition from Valentina Corvi. Corvi has been very good in the second part of this season, but there's no need to talk about Corvi, unfortunately, because she is in quarantine for the same reason as Paletti, which we just mentioned. So that's unfortunate news. I think that it should indeed be Buckstead Bentveld for places 1 and 2 without anything crazy happening. For the third place, however, there are a lot of riders this year who've taken that place, been close to that place. Who do you guys think at the World Championships will be in contention for that third place?
Yeah, obviously, Corvi and Fansina are not there, you said, and I think, Halter is also not attending, but that has nothing to do with the COVID, but, personal things with school. So then, yeah, it's a bit hard to then place someone there. I think Federica Venturelli has been doing quite well. Eliska Anakova has been riding also very good. That Czech girls that have been riding, they have been riding quite well. So interested to see what they're gonna do. Lauren Molengraaf has been doing quite well as well. So I think that might be very interesting, that battle for third. And I think that it will be a very interesting race, not for the victory probably, but the places behind on the podium are going to be, I think, entertaining to watch.
Yeah, and I think you can add Gladikova, Julia Kopecky, and Lilo Fabregu as well. Probably a few more on a good day that can indeed fill out the rest of the podium.
I think it doesn't stop there, because McLean Howell has also been very strong, bit under the radar, but I think this should be a course for her, definitely one that I'm keeping my eye on. Indeed, Van Sinai isn't here because she was one of the Belgians that tested positive for COVID, but we still haven't mentioned Ava Holmgren or Catherine Sarkisov. Both have been on the podium of Belgian races as well. So I think that it's going to be a very open battle for that third place. Who takes it will purely come down to the form of the day. I expect it to be one of the Czech riders. Thinking which one, that's very, very hard. But those are really these Czech riders. They have they're with four that can end on the podium. So I think that we should be looking at that group of riders, because just by the numbers they have a better chance at it. But at the same time, Venturelli, this is her type of course. It's predicted to be somewhat faster than normal. Venturelli in Hogerheide this weekend in the World Cup with the elites, on the section descent plus stairs, she had the 8th time on the day. That meant she was 15 seconds quicker than Bentveld, I think, over the entire race, and that's quite a lot considering the time difference between these two. There's a big stair section here as well, also some downhills where you need to send it. So if Venturelli can match the same times there as what Betsema can do, I think it will be between Venturelli and then one or two Czech riders to fight for that podium place, and my dark horse McLean Howell. But I think it's going to be very open. And do you guys also expect that this will be a group, or do you guys expect that it will be pulled apart? Because the Buckstead, I mean, it's not Van Der Poel, but they ride in a similar way, set out fast, pull it apart. Do you think that it will group together behind, or do you think that it will be a matter of who can stay with Buckstead and Bentveld for the longest amount of time?
There's a delicate balance between staying there long enough and then eventually riding your own tempo before blowing up, and staying there slightly too long and then losing out completely. I think we'll see a combination of the two, and just some falling back, some pacing themselves back up, and we'll have an interesting battle throughout.
And who do you then see come out victorious at the end?
For me, I think Gladikova has the best papers.
So then your prediction is going to be Buckstead, Bentveld, Gladikova.
Yes.
And what about you, Issam?
I will go with Buckstead first. I mean, that's not a surprise. And then I will go with Bentveld second. Just thinking that will be, that she will do what she did the whole season, basically. And then Frederica Venturelli in third.
Just to give a look at some of the predictions of other people who predicted on our Instagram, Jens Dekker and Helen Wyman both have Ava Holmgren for third. Elodie Kuiper sides with you. She chooses Venturelli, Issam. Then we have Ian Akert choosing Hanakova. Ava Holmgren herself choosing Gladikova, just like you, Twan. So I think that I will be going with Hanakova, although I haven't really mentioned her yet, but I think Julia Kopecky is also a dangerous rider, has road experience, is making the step to the next gen team on the road. Let's talk a bit still, besides our predictions about Kopecky and Holmgren, who we heard from on the podcast, which will have the full stories tomorrow. About Kopecky, Twan, you follow the women cycling on the road quite a bit. I don't know, you know that she's making the step to the next gen team, but has she really made any standout performances to you already on the road?
Julia Kopecky, I think, riding one good race in the Basque countries, but from what I can see, not directly some names that I recognize. Just a good junior. By choosing a Czech nationality, she gets some nice opportunities, and with moving to next gen, she has a very nice team for next season on the road.
Yeah, and next gen, they have an eye for talent, and I mean, I think that is correct. Kopecky didn't have the best start to the season, also not the best end of the road season. Don't know the full story behind that, but I think that the World Championships always provide us with surprises. It will come down who can deal with the pressure. And I think that Kopecky has that advantage that she did race the Road World Championships. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Kopecky in the mix for the podium. But just to finalize, my prediction for the podium will be Buckstead, Bentveld, Hanakova. Then to finish off, one of the favorites we mentioned, Ava Holmgren, or well, we maybe mentioned her as one of the outsiders. But anyway, let's hear from her what her goals are for the World Championship.
My main goal would probably be a top 5, but I really want that top 3 spot on the podium. That would be amazing. But with everything that has happened so far, I'm already satisfied with how my racing has been. And my season has been great, and I've already achieved so many goals. So anything that happens at the World Championships, I will be fine with.
Well, I think we've had it then for this very long preview for the World Championships. Twan and Issam, thank you for wanting to be here today and speak with us.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
We look forward to this World Championships. It should be a very exciting weekend of racing. If you're wondering where you can find more information on these World Championships, make sure to check our website, cyclocross.social. There is a guide to everything up there. Thanks for listening. Make sure to share this with your cyclocross friends. Send us your predictions. You can either comment them on our Instagram or send them to us actually on our email address, which is posted in the description below. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.